One word?
Yes.
One response. Sitting next to me is one of the most important cultural figures in Palestine. The quintessential son of Jerusalem and the greatest expert. It's you, okay? Nazmi is a Palestinian patriot. I am an unabashed Zionist. I find it tiresome coming to Washington to hear how poorly we get along and how much we disrespect one another. That may work in this town, it doesn't work in Jerusalem.
John Lewis.
I'd like to go back to the context of your plan. I haven't read the latest version, so maybe you've answered this. But from earlier discussions with some of you about your approach, which I have great admiration for, I'm still confused and troubled and worried about the governing authority, the board of directors, representing the two bilateral governments. They would be presumably nominated by their cabinets. They would be political figures of some stature. They would be politicians par excellence, even if you have some international players intermixed. And I can't figure out exactly how the administrator and his sanitized system of neutral administration can really avoid getting caught up in the outside political world with that governing body to whom he reports. Because the outside world is going to go on, and it's going to have lots of political landmines in it, while the Jerusalem formula is being put into place. How do you help him survive in that political crossfire?
Yes.
I think such a formula cannot function without the goodwill of all parties and the interest of the two parties to protect it. If the two parties, the Palestinians and the Israelis in this case, will see in the special regime as a vital interest of their own orientation toward the city, they can protect it. But if there is a Palestinian-Israeli disagreement about the way the things are run in the old city, I think there is no way to make it functionable. Therefore, this requires really a full peace agreement and a full protection of the peace agreement from both parties. Otherwise, this initiative cannot function. I can see it that both parties can continue claiming that the old city is part of their capital because the sovereignty over it is not decided yet. Therefore, it is a magic formula for dispute resolution. Therefore, I can see a good possibility that with respect to all the problematic issues in the old city can be very functional.
Other comments? John Bell?
Well, more directly towards what Sam was asking. Israel and Palestine will create the governance board, but they will not compose the governance board alone. We have not defined that clearly, but we suggest that Israel and Palestine will decide who's on the board. But maybe there's a presumption to be developed that there are many other members of that board. That's point number one. The second is that we do emphasize in the document that the governance board is not involved in the day-to-day governance of the old city. That's the administrator. So in a way, when the governance board chooses the administrator, gives him his mandate, grosso modo, he or she will run the old city. And that is an important premise in our work. If we end up in loops of reassessment of the chief administrator, our system won't work. It needs some degree of clarity between the governance board and the chief authority of delegation of authority. That's a critical move there. Without that, our system, I think, would have a large problem.
Lieutenant Kurtzer?
I would just add one, I guess we call it functional aspect. any treaty between Israel and Palestine is going to involve various layers of dispute resolution mechanisms and various layers of monitoring and accountability. And I think part of those are going to have to be integrated with whatever particular solution is reached in Jerusalem. I think the problem that Sam has identified is a real one. Jerusalem is, in a sense, going to be the last issue resolved, and it's being the last issue resolved because of a good reason. It's one of the most emotional. But it also needs particular care and attention with respect to how disputes get resolved, both in the context of the Jerusalem management, but also in the larger context of the peace treaty implementation.
I would just say, Sam, as well, that in our last document, which is a kind of a negotiating agenda, if you like, the short 15-page one at the beginning, that we devoted a lot of attention to differentiating, to giving the governance board real responsibilities, but to differentiating between those responsibilities and that of the chief administrator. In other words, the governance board, by their peace treaty, the two parties, Israelis and Palestinians, are responsible for the mandate. That gives them the authority to do a number of things. It gives them the authority to appoint the chief administrator and to dismiss the chief administrator. It gives them the power to hold the chief administrator responsible for the implementation of the mandate through periodic meetings. So that is a broad umbrella mandate thing, but nevertheless with real powers. In other words, the chief of police would, a recommendation would be made by the chief administrator to the governance board, and the governance board would approve or not that nomination for chief of police. On the other hand, on a day-to-day basis, dealing with disturbances in the old city, should there be a riot or whatever, to use an easy example, that would be solely the responsibility of the chief administrator. Now, the governance board, after the fact, could come and say, we don't feel that you've handled this in accordance with the mandate. But at the time, and the need to act is there on a day-to-day basis to make that city work, that would be the choice, subject to judicial constraint and what have you, normal constraints. That would be the choice of the chief administrator. Did I speak that long? Please, next.
Hi, Adam Nixon with Aldora TV. It's good to see so many of you again. I think those of us that, probably everybody in the room that knows and loves Old Jerusalem understands how difficult it is to divide, not only in the quarters, but in the blocks, in the homes, in the storefronts. And so I think it's an elegant plan that it allows us to not have to do that. But I wonder, my question is, does it push the problem through the Damascus Gate into East Jerusalem? Meaning, does the plan work does the plan work independently of a solution for East Jerusalem? Does it work if East Jerusalem is controlled as part of a Palestinian state, or does it work if East Jerusalem is part of Israel, or does it work either way, I guess is my question.
John, Nazmi?
Please. First of all, I would like just to make a note about the old city. The neighborhoods are not really so defined as they look on the map. You know, the mixture between the so-called Muslim quarter and Christian quarter is absolutely great. You know, the Via della Rosa goes through the so-called Muslim quarter. Muslims are living in the Christian quarter. The only quarter which is between two brackets pure is the Jewish quarter. Otherwise, the quarters are mixed. Now, I think that this can work only with one assumption, that there are two-state solution, two capitals in Jerusalem. Without that, it couldn't function.